God protects his devotees. And some of you have traveled with us to Mount Washington, the main ashram of Yoganandaji in Los Angeles. And you remember what a steep hill that is to get up to Mount Washington. And I'm going to read a story from the New Path concerning that hill and God's protection. As Krishna says, Arjuna, know this for certain, my devotee is never lost. Swamiji tells the story of a brother monk, Norman. Norman entered the dining room one day at lunchtime, looking stunned. This morning, he announced shakily, I was driving the big flatbed truck down Mount Washington. As I came to the steepest part of that hill, I stepped on the brake to slow down for the hairpin turn at the bottom. But my foot went right to the floor. I pumped frantically. Nothing happened. By this time, the truck was going so fast I couldn't shift to a lower gear. In moments, I knew I would be hurtling to my death over the edge of that steep embankment. Desperately, I prayed to Master, is this what you want? Suddenly, the truck slowed to a complete stop. The brakes were not working, but I was able to park it safely. What a blessing, he concluded, that to have a God-realized master for a guru. There was another similar story about the monks with Yogananda, and two of them were doing a building project, spreading plaster. And one man, the ladder was at an angle going up about 20 feet at a very steep angle, and too steep. And one of the monks was going up the ladder with a big load of plaster on his shoulder. And so he had only one hand, and he missed the rung with that hand. And with the load of plaster, pulled him back. He started to fall backwards. He knew that he was beyond help. And he thought desperately of Master, and he cried out, Om. And in that moment, others were watching this. His body came upright. He came back to the ladder, he grasped it again, even though he was leaning over and in the process of falling. Swamiji said that he couldn't recall a single incident where a disciple of Yoganandaji had failed to find protection in the time of real need. It's faith and trust that brings that protection from God. Yesterday, during our meditation, I used the affirmation of Yoganandaji. I go forth in perfect faith, in the power of omnipresent good, to bring me what I need at the time I need it. Now, what we need, of course, is a little different than what we want. The affirmation doesn't say, I will receive what I want when I want it, but what I need when I need it. One other close disciple of Yoganandaji, Senior Cuaron, he was in charge of the center in Mexico City, and he had been quite well-to-do and had a good job, and then he lost that job. It took him a long time before he found another job, and he got this excellent offer, and he wrote to Guruji and to tell him about this. And he wrote him a letter by post, and immediately he got a telegram back, and Guruji said, do not take that job under any circumstances. He was puzzled, he was disappointed, but he obeyed. And then he learned a month later that that same company he was going to work for was convicted in a fraud case, and that all of the officers went to prison, including the person who took the position that he was going to take. And interestingly, Yoganandaji never did give Senor Kwaran a job. For the rest of his life, he lived very simply, just having what he needed. And evidently, he no longer needed the lesson of living in luxury. We also can't presume or draw on God's help for our own selfish motives. It just doesn't work that way. Another disciple had the habit of going to the center of Los Angeles, leaving her car and not locking it. And she reasoned that, I have a guru, he's going to protect me. And the car was stolen. And evidently she also needed to learn common sense. And it can be our presumption to think that it's our willpower or our positive thought that manifested that parking place or that new car or that job. God usually doesn't work that way. He's more concerned with our spiritual growth than he is about our selfish desires or our own comfort. And he's just as likely to take those things away from us if we're getting too attached, if that's what we need for our spiritual growth. Yesterday we had a lovely Bhagavad Gita class, and one of the points that Mr. Gupta made, he said that Krishna says that even with God's protection, that challenges and tests and problems still come to us. If we need those things for our growth. But they needn't cause us suffering. Whether we suffer as a result of them or not, that's our personal choice. God protects his devotees, but acting the role of a devotee for some people at sometimes seems difficult. Can make some people anxious. There's the thought of, well, am I trying hard enough? Am I surrendering myself enough? And devotion is difficult for me. How do I best pray? And Sri Krishna gives us the answer here also. And as he says that if these qualities seem too subtle or elusive, then also do something more tangible. Serve me. Do seva and then offer the fruits of your actions to God. And if you can't remain absorbed in me all the time, then serve me. And then Krishna says, if even in activity you can't think of me, then give me your intentions. And if even in this we fail, offer God our failure. Guruji said, God likes that. He likes it when you include him in every moment of the day, no matter how embarrassing or humiliating or private you think certain moments are. Share them with God. And God gives us the ultimate protection. Guruji makes this promise. He said, those who stay in tune till the end of life, at that moment, I or one of the other masters will be there to usher them into the divine kingdom. Thank you.
quite a promise that Krishna makes. My devotee is never lost. I know it gives us great comfort and confidence, and we believe in God, and we believe we are, I think most of us probably believe we're good devotees, so that means that we're never lost, and that's a good thing. And yet we can just dive a little bit deeper into this statement and say, actually, God protects his devotees was the statement I wanted to use. That God protects his devotees. So I'm a devotee, he'll protect me. But we can dive a little deeper into that statement and say, exactly what does he mean by protection? And exactly what does he mean by devotee? And so we could say, well, I do puja, I believe in God, and I do the rituals that I've been told to do, and I've been doing everything that, that my parents told me to do all these years, and I feel like I'm a very, very good devotee. So since I've done all these things, I feel that he's going to protect me. And means he'll probably protect my life and protect the life of my family members, and everything is just going to be fine. And then, again, yesterday we had this Gita class. It was really nice with Vasant Gupta. And he was saying he was going back over the second chapter of the Gita, which is basically Krishna saying to Arjuna, why are you lamenting? Why are you panicking right now, just as you're going into battle? Because you're afraid that your relatives are going to be killed? He just said, that's no reason to lament. First of all, life is eternal. There is no death. That's one reason not to lament. Another is, even if you don't believe that, if they're born, they're going to die and be reborn again. So why lament that? And so maybe by protecting his devotee doesn't mean that our family members aren't going to get killed. And so what about Arjuna himself? And Krishna says, even if you die, you're going to die a glorious death. So also, that's no problem. Why would you lament at that? So here's Krishna saying he's going to protect his devotee, and yet he's saying, but your family members could be killed, and you may be killed. So if that's true, what kind of protection is that? And we have to say that, of course, he's saying that he's going to protect us from delusion. He's going to protect us from bondage to cycles of birth and death and rebirth until eternally. He's going to protect us from that. And he's going to protect our soul. He's going to protect us eternally, not just in this one lifetime. And so we can say, where is our heart exactly? Are we putting our faith and heart into God? Or are we putting it into something a little more temporary? Like maybe we're putting it into building up our situation so it looks very nice. Building up our house, our families, our jobs, our bank account, and getting our own situation as secure as possible, and then hoping that that's what he's going to protect. Are we putting our energy into that separate situation that's separate from God? Are we putting our heart into that? Are we putting our minds on that all the time? Because if so, when tragedy hits, we may be very disappointed, and we may feel that, where is God now? He said he was going to protect me, and where is he? But when we put our heart and our faith into something that's temporary, I think we're bound to be disappointed and we're bound to suffer. Whereas if we put our heart in something long-lasting and eternal, like God, like realizing his presence with us all the time, like trying to uplift and expand our consciousness so that we can be one with him, if that's what we put our energy into, and we put our heart into loving him above all else, and we put our energy into serving him above all else, then when tragedy hits, we have looked at the big picture, and we know that this is just a passing phase, And then in the long run, we will be one with God. He will be protecting us and with us every step of the way. Yogananda uses the analogy of being like a maidservant in your home. Maidservant comes in, she takes care of the children, she does her duties, she takes care of everything, and she does it perfectly. And while she's there, she acts like this is her home, and these are the children she's taking care of, and these are her duties. But in her heart, she knows that her true home is back in the village. And so that's what we can do. This is our home. We're doing our duties, but our true home is somewhere else. Where we really come from and where we're going back to is somewhere else. So let's maintain that slight objectivity in our lives and don't get so caught up. This is what the masters do, of course. The masters show us, they have an entirely different perspective. You know, they're not trying to set up a situation, a separate situation in life for themselves that they're trying to keep and uphold and keep separate and prop up. You know, the masters are looking at the bigger picture always. It's like the movie screen, you know? It's not like they're looking at the movie and completely caught up in the movie. They're looking back at the projector. Yogananda always used to say, don't get caught up in the drama. Look back at the source of light and shadow that creates the drama. So you can always turn around in the movie theater and see that beam of light coming out. You know, that's where we need to focus, not on the screen, but on the beam of light. And that's exactly what the masters do. They're not identified with this, even their separate bodies, let alone a separate situation. Yogananda says in the autobiography, he talks about how Lahiri Mahashaya, in the middle of a satsang, or talking with his disciples, said suddenly he could feel the pain of people dying off the coast of Japan whose boat has sunk. He was not in his own body, he was in all bodies. He's a part of all that is. That's the way the masters are. And Yogananda, Swamiji used to help Yogananda walk to his car. And Yogananda used to say, thank you for helping me. I forget which legs to keep moving. So they're a part of all that is, and they're showing us what we are. They're showing us our own reality. That's why the masters incarnate. That's why they come. It's to show us our own potential. Because we may be thinking, I'm really far from that. You know, that's not really my reality. And so what hope is there for me? But that's why they came. And if you remember, Christ said, these things you will do, and more, and greater than these things will you do. And speaking of Christ, you know, when the soldiers came and arrested him to take him away to be crucified, you know, he walked forward into his destiny. As they said, are you Jesus Christ, or where is Jesus Christ? And he stepped forward, and those soldiers just fell down with the force of his energy, just standing up and moving towards his destiny, which to everybody else looks like a tragedy. And he says, I'm doing the will of God. This is what my Father wants me to do. And that's where I'm putting my heart. That's where I'm putting my energy, into his will. And then he was on trial in front of Pilate. We talked about this at Easter. He's on trial with Pilate, and Pilate doesn't want to put Jesus to death. He knows that somehow or another this is going to come back and haunt him. No, I'm sorry. This is a satsang. We don't actually take questions right now. And so Pilate says, you know, all you have to say is you're not the king of the Jews, and I'll let you go free. And he said, if I wanted, a legion of angels would come and rescue me here and take me out of this situation. He said, but that's not God's will. That's what's happening right now. And so he said, these things and greater shall you do. He said, don't you know that ye are gods? And he said, be thou perfect, even as our Father in heaven is perfect. This is all of our destiny. This is reality for all of us. But we forget, and we're confused. And then Krishna says, give your heart wholly to me, and you will be in me and I will be in you. Our consciousnesses will merge. We will be one. So that is really the big question for all of us. It's like, what do we love? What do we love most? Because what we love most is who we are. And when we love God most, and we do everything we can to merge our consciousness with Him, to serve Him, to think of Him, we are not like the obedient follower of a church that just follows the rules and does the behavior, but has his heart somewhere else. This is where our heart is. We are one with Him, and we have come very far already. If you think about it, think of this evolution of our soul. Surely when we first took incarnations as a human, we were dull, not very smart, maybe stayed in bed all the time, maybe stayed in a cave all the time, who knows. We were probably not very smart. And then maybe we were mean, maybe we were murderers or thieves, or just trying to beat the other person. And then maybe after that, and maybe even this lifetime for us, we're putting out a lot of energy and a lot of creativity, but for ourselves. And that was me 20 years ago for sure. Putting a lot of energy and creativity so as long as I can make a lot of money at that job, and buy a house and do all these things. And then we realize, well, maybe if that is not fulfilling and giving me what I'm looking for, maybe I can use all that energy and creativity and consciousness for God and loving God and serving Him. And that is the direction that we're all in. We are the warriors that put the ideal of loving God and living our lives for God ahead of everything else. And that is the path of self-realization, and that is what they brought us. So we're warriors. We're not Vaishyas making a bargain, making a deal with God. If I do these pujas, then you please protect me. It's like, I am living for you, no matter what will you give me, no matter what you tell me to do. I'm sticking with you, and I'm serving you. And Master said, we are so close to the bliss of God. He said it's just a change of our consciousness, just looking a different direction. And we're one with God. We're looking at the movie screen. All we have to do is turn around and look at the light. And then God protects us always. God protects our souls. God protects our growth. God protects our evolution. God blesses us, blesses our family. And because we are one with Him. So, why do we want to make all that effort? Because we love God. And speaking of the Gita yesterday, it was like that Gita helps us to love God more, helps us to open our heart and love God more. And that's why we quote it, that's why we study it, and that's why we love God.